I think that's the thing is that once you realise that, that's when then that's just freedom because you don't have to worry about it because if you're sitting in a restaurant and you've written a wine list that's got the most obscure shit you can possibly imagine on there because you think it's really good, yeah, cool. If it's your restaurant, go to town.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because you live and die by the sword. If you can't sell it, that's on you.
Yeah.
And then you just drink it yourself or whatever. But if you're the commercial viability of a wine list should be the number one thing.
Yeah.
It needs to make sense for the venue. It needs to make money for the venue. And
Which relates to your demographic of people that's walking through the doors.
Absolutely. Let's roll. I like it. Sounds very official. The glasses are being adjusted. It's very serious.
Trying to act smart. It's not fucking working.
These glasses aren't real. Yeah. I haven't had to wear glasses for 15 years, 30, 15. Who am I kidding?
You're old. Just own it.
Yeah, exactly. Morning, TK.
Good morning, Peter.
How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Are you?
Yeah.
That's excellent to hear.
Monday morning.
Why not?
Ready to go.
Yeah, let's do it. We're going to start this episode talking about us, which is obviously
It's going to be boring
Yeah,
as
it's
fuck.
going to be
Low
really
ratings,
short.
proper.
Sorry, everyone. This will be over in 17 seconds. But I think it's
You're an interesting rooster, mate. You really are. No, I mean that. I mean that.
Well, okay. That's
true.
That's where we stop. You're an interesting rooster.
No, I'm just saying you're an interesting guy.
Oh,
like,
okay.
I think you've got a fantastic story to tell.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I think what's interesting is thinking about starting this podcast and everything else. You start thinking about some history, and I know we've spoken about a couple of things, and one of the things is like how we met in Brisbane. Doing some charity work together, and then you think about how much time that's been, and I think it's probably maybe 16 or 17 years. I think something like that. Sorry to say that out loud, but it's also. Like that's a long period of time.
It is.
The amount of change that's happened in that amount of time.
I feel as though I've lived a lifetime, or maybe 3 or 4 lifetimes. Yeah,
exactly. But it's interesting, and what I mean by that is like not just the industry, like the hospitality industry, the change that's happened in that amount of time, but personally, the amount of change that's happened for each of us. Very, very different in a positive way. But I think part of what we need to do is kind of explore a little bit about our history. Of how we've got to this point, I suppose, and why we're sitting in front of a couple of microphones talking gibberish for a little while.
And mate, I think that for any young budding hospitality pro that might want to switch this on and have a listen, I think we've got a good story to tell. I think we've made, I speak on behalf of myself here, we've made a lot of mistakes and we've had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And the one thing I say all the time is the hospitality industry's just got so much to give. It's a fantastic industry and you can travel the world, you can have a bunch of fun, you can live a great life. It doesn't need to be that stopgap while you're studying at uni.
Absolutely.
And people need to know that you can have a great career in this.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can provide some insight for some people so they don't have to make the same mistakes we've both probably made probably 3 or 4 times over.
Yeah, exactly right.
I went to an open sort of careers day at my son's school a couple of months ago, and it's a private school, and my kids are very fortunate to go to a great school. And it's funny because I was the only hospitality guy there. There wasn't too many people wanted to sit at the table and listen.
Yeah.
But then I started talking to a few people, and I just asked them what they wanted to do, and there was people that were saying things because they thought it was the right thing to say. And I kept saying, you don't need to know. And I got frowned upon, I thought, because, I think young kids, there's a lot of pressure on them to know what they have to do. And I keep saying, I want to say this over and over again to my kids, is you don't need to know what you want to do straight away.
No.
If you happen to fall into it and you find that path that you love, it's very rare, but geez, you're fortunate. And I'm that person. Like I do what I love, and it doesn't feel like I go to work. I cooked in the kitchen, standing in the kitchen for 15, 16 hours a day for 25 years and loved every moment of it. Yes, it was tough. There was times where I wanted to quit, but in all, this industry has been so good to me, and I've loved it, which makes me one of few people who have chosen a great career that you really love going to work every day. I think that's rare. What do you reckon?
I think it's very rare.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things where you know, people talk about, like you said, going to work every day but not feeling like it's work, and you know, doing what you love and then you don't feel like you're going to work every day. And I think, and you know, I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I was watching this thing where this guy was like, he was on stage, he was being interviewed for something. He was in the fitness industry, and this kid stood up and he's like, "Oh, how did you find your passion?" And he said, "I didn't find it the way that everyone thinks. Like, it wasn't. I didn't fall in love with this and decide that this is what I was going to do." He said, "I just started doing it."
Yep.
But the reason he started doing what he was doing, because he sat there and was like, right, what can I do that I don't have to work too much? I can work from home.
Yep.
And I can wear shorts. And they were the three caveats for him. And he ended up being a personal trainer. And after 3 years of doing it and never having a day off and loving every second of it, he's like, that's when he fell in love with it, because he realized it was actually giving him what he wanted. And I don't think, I mean, certainly for me, that's definitely not how I started.
Yeah.
I think, but then maybe I did, you know, I think that.
How did the wine thing come into it?
For me?
Yeah.
All right,
So
cool.
I don't know that part about you. Like,
Yeah.
how did? I mean, you're very modest, but there'd be very few people with very few people in my circle of friends that have got anywhere near the wine knowledge that you have. It's pretty unique.
Well, I think that yeah. I don't necessarily agree with that in terms of the knowledge thing is something that for me, and I think it's like anyone who knows a little bit about something, the more they know, the more they realise they don't know. What's scary is when people say, "No, I know a lot about this," and wine is one of those things where people have a little bit of knowledge and it gets scary real quick because they just think they know everything, and that's just not the case. And I don't profess to know anywhere near.
I think sommeliers, baristas, and cocktail bartenders, the sheer arrogance around those people. But you're not like that. But you're really seriously not.
I think
If somebody gets in a cock measure, you'll blow them
I'll
up.
smash you. Yeah, exactly. Well, but again, it's like now I'm like, maybe I'm a bit older, but I sort of go, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Like, why do you feel the need to either belittle someone else by going, oh, I drink this and I drink that? It's like, I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
I actually don't care what people drink. And it's almost one of those things where you meet someone for the first time, not necessarily in the industry, but people who are outside the industry that wine is a passion for them in particular, they feel like they need to almost justify how much they know by saying what they've drunk, whatever. And it does get into a pissing contest really quickly. And I've been really fortunate to drink the great wines of the world on many occasions. When I say drink, taste, you know, because generally I'm opening them and serving them for someone else. I'm not out there buying a bottle of 28 Margot or that kind of thing. But
So how did it start?
how did it start?
Because the knowledge that you have,
Yeah.
that's a long journey to have that knowledge.
I can be honest that it started out of necessity.
Yep.
So we had a cafe at QT at Kelvin Grove in the late 90s, and we got a license there, and we knew nothing about wine. And
How old were you now?
I was 21.
Yeah, right.
So you know, we were literally making shit up as we went. For better or worse.
Wouldn't have been Google back then either, was it?
Google. There was books.
Back of the label.
We were close to the library. That was kind of handy. But but there wasn't. That's the thing. I mean, it's a very different world these days. You can't just go, you know, what's the best wage cost? Or, you know, it just didn't exist. So, I mean, I was at that uni a few years prior. And one of the things we had to do for uni was send an email. That was actually an assessment. Like, we got 5%. Because we could send an email
you send
in like 1995 now. Yeah, 35. That's before 9 o'clock. Not me. But it was for us, and certainly for me, it was a necessity. I needed to learn about it a little bit. And so I started to taste a little bit and get into it a little bit, and was never really like, oh my God, I love this. This is amazing. It was just like, well, I mean, I like booze. Who doesn't? There was a kind of, I mean, the origin story, if we go back even further, when I was traveling, I was in France, and I had a couple of really unique experiences there that kind of, I think, probably pushed me down the track without me even realizing it at the time. But having to write a wine list when you have no idea, and it was rubbish. I mean, I know that wine list was horrendous. There's one worse, which was the second wine list, which was at a place in Brisbane that we opened after that called Modern Dining down at the Powerhouse.
Remember it well.
And
you feed half of Brisbane every day.
It was insane, that place. And the wine list for there, my God, probably need to pause and have a think about how bad it was. The wine list there, that was a dangerous point for me because I thought I knew a little bit, and so I started doing things, started writing that wine list with a little bit of knowledge. and it was horrendous.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember vividly someone asking me a question about something. It was about Burgundy, and I managed to convince them wholeheartedly, and I believe that Chambertin was a grape variety and not a region, which is just not true. But so if you say it loud enough and as many times in your own head, then you're just going to believe it. It was bad.
And what was your role at what?
So myself and my business partner, in inverted commas, there was our business. So
right.
I worked in that business like it was mine.
Like a floor manager.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was it was definitely on the floor a lot of the time. To be honest, the first probably few months there, I was on the coffee machine. On the weekends, we were doing 500, 600 people for breakfast. Like, it was nuts.
It was a big...
The first couple...
I lived in Tenerife at that time.
Yeah, and I think it was a good time for restaurants. There was a bit of money around.
Yeah.
People were happy to spend money. There was a great spot. Like, it still is a great spot. Yeah. And I don't think we kind of knew. And we won a tender for that. And again, we were 21 or 22 years old at the time. And it doesn't... Still to this day, I'm like, how the hell did that happen?
It's a monstrous restaurant, wasn't it? Like, I remember it was vast, but then then the outside area just kept going. But it was right on the river. It was cool. Yeah. It was really good.
And I think that's the thing is that, and kudos to, believe it or not, the city council, because they threw money at that.
Yeah.
And they knew they were on something pretty cool there.
It's in the powerhouse,
right?
Yeah,
the powerhouse, right at the bottom. And
who was the chef?
The first chef we had, this is interesting. I'm not sure what order it went, actually. I can't remember who the first chef. I think it was. We definitely had a guy called Mark Rousel-Turner, who was a great chef, great guy, and he's still around. Mark's still in the industry, still working. We had Steve Szabo, he was out of the Gold Coast. I think he replaced Mark. There's a lot happening. This is a long time ago.
Szabo's a good cook, mate.
But yeah,
he was at Plazano Versace for years.
Yeah.
Mad Welshman.
But yeah, was
he cranky?
Everyone was cranky back then. But there, the thing is, it was 0 to 100 in 2 seconds that we just weren't ready for. I think the second week the restaurant roof collapsed because of a water pipe broke, and it was manic. And it was a lot. It was a lot at the time, and it was started for me. That business started heading in a direction that I didn't want to be involved in, so I left. And then probably got more serious about wine after that. Started working at Restaurant 2, and that's when you start seeing the great wines of the world and that kind of thing. So
because that was a super polished restaurant. I remember restaurant. My as a kid entering the hospitality industry, it was like Restaurant 2 was the pinnacle. Like, it was in Queensland, in Brizzy, it was probably as good as you get. Back then it was Baguette and Restaurant 2, and there's a few other guys who were doing some great things. I mean, Bruno Lubo was down there, and Terry Galashay.
Exactly.
Unbelievable. And great time.
They were institutional restaurants, I think, and it was a really good time. The funny thing is, and I still think about this to this day, like, we had a great team. We had an amazing team there over multiple years. But I don't think we ever took it that seriously, like, in terms of, we never thought we were good.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the key.
Me too. I totally agree.
The second you think you're okay, someone's going to smoke you.
Yeah.
And I think for us, like, we started winning some awards, and, business was good and everything else, but God, we also had some fun in that place.
Yeah.
God, there's some debaucherousness that happened there. There's some things that will not be told and cannot be told.
I went to some amazing wine tastings at Restaurant 2.
Yeah, there's some great dinners, and, we used to do, that was when the Hilton Masterclass was on.
Yeah, how good was that? They used to get Ramsay, Charlie Trotter.
It was incredible who they used to get out.
Unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. It really was.
That was like a pinnacle of the year to go out to the Hilton Masterclass.
And I remember we did, I don't know how many years I was there, and we were doing stuff for the Masterclass, and then would end up back at the restaurant. And we had one dinner there. It was the last night for all the presenters, and I think we went through something like 2,500 glasses, and it was just, and I smashed one of them through my hand, the last tray of the night at like 2:30 in the morning. Anyway, the good thing about using crystal is that if you go and you need to find it, you can get it x-rayed and they can find it because of the lead. So that was kind of handy.
So they're digging through your hands to try and find the other half of the
With a
glass.
shovel. So what about you, mate? Where did you start? What was the
Bar
starting
Surf
point?
Club, mate.
How old were you?
Well, I wanted to be a golf pro. I just wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
So straight out of school. My old man was he was a bit of a taskmaster. Like, he had a crane hire business on the coast.
Yeah.
Worked his ass off, and like, he was a 7-day a week. He was a weapon.
Yeah.
And he always said, you got to have a trade. The golf pro thing, it was a pipe dream. I wanted to be a golf pro so bad, and I tried so hard. But I was 17, finished school. My old man said you can have a gap year and stay at home to give golf a shot.
Yeah.
But I soon realised, it was probably 3 or 4 months into it, I played in a couple of junior tournaments. And I just knew that I was never going to be a player on tour making a great living. I was going to be a golf pro in a clubhouse selling T-shirts, which kudos to those guys, but I just didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I loved cooking. I knew that I loved cooking. In the back of my head, it was always a toss-up whether or not I was going to go into the hospitality industry or be a golf pro. Now,
was food at home, like was there?
yeah, my mum and my grandmother were avid cooks, and there was never a time where we didn't have a hot meal on the table. And my mum would start prepping for dinner at 2:00 because my old man used to go to work at 5. Dinner was on the table. As soon as he walked in the door, it was like, ta-da! So food was always really important to us. We had no money, but we made do, and my mum cooked delicious food.
Yeah.
So I was always really interested in that, and I was a fat kid too, so I loved food. So I went to the surf club. My old man knew the guys, Reg and Ros Cannon, who was managing the Mooloolaba Surf Club, and I went in there. I did nearly 12 months at the surf club.
As an apprentice? Or?
Yeah, first year apprentice.
Yeah.
And then, I sort of worked in the golf club kitchen for a while, washing dishes and a few other bits and pieces, and really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So getting my apprenticeship started was sort of the natural step.
Yeah.
But after a year, Reg and Ros both came to me and said, we think you should get out of here. And the Hyatt Coolum was a proper 5-star hotel back then.
Yep.
It had 9 restaurants, 120 odd chefs. So I went up there and spoke to the executive chef, and he said, "We'll take you on, but you need to start your apprenticeship again." And I was like, "Fuck that! I've worked."
Why? What?
Because I had I had a very, very specific training program.
Oh, it's different
for the
where
Hyatt.
it's that what's it called now? And like basically it's skills based.
Yeah.
Where they kind of assess you and go,
But
yes.
there was the apprenticeship, which you got your doc stamped at the end of it.
ticket,
But then the Hyatt had a training program which you started in in-flight catering. You actually started in issuing and receiving, where you learnt how to receive stock, and you learnt how to order stock, and you learnt how to store it.
Right.
And then from there that was a few weeks, and then you moved into in-flight catering. Qantas, we had the in-flight catering contract at the Hyatt for Qantas business class catering.
Flying out of where? Out of
Maroochydore.
Yeah,
So we got taught food safety to the proper, and you needed to spend 6 months in there. Then you went into pastry, and you learnt pastry, and then you went to banquets, and you learnt banquets, doing big numbers. Then you got into the restaurants. Now you didn't even step foot into a restaurant until the end of your second year apprenticeship. And then it was breakfast. Get up at 2 to feed. Like the Hyatt back then, it was 1,200 people. So you can imagine when it rained up there.
Yeah.
The property spread over 12 acres. The printer, I still have nightmares. As soon as it rained,
printer?
oh my god, it was the tags would be on the ground.
Yeah.
But so you had to do breakfast, then room service, graveyard, and then you got onto lunch, and then dinner. Now you're starting to cook proper stuff. So you learn how to make beef stocks, and you'd be cooking burgers and burgers and stuff at lunchtime, bolognese, and then at dinner time you'd start cooking fine stuff. And then by the time you got to your halfway through your third year, you went to Mackenzie Grill, which was their semi-formal steakhouse. It was nice, but it was a quintessential American steakhouse. But then when you started your fourth year, you spent all of your fourth year in their fine dining restaurant,
Right.
which was called Petrie's. And then it changed to Fishtails, which was a seafood-based fine dining restaurant.
Okay.
Garrett-on trolleys and cloches and all that sort of shit. But when you finished, you needed to prepare a 6-course degustation menu. You needed to cost the menu out. You needed to prepare it. You picked 3 chefs in the kitchen to help you. Then you served it to 12 people in the restaurant, including the general manager, the executive chef, the chef de cuisine of that kitchen. And then from there, they chose whether or not they were going to sign you off.
No pressure.
So, I spent 5, nearly 6 years there.
Yeah.
I got promoted pretty quickly straight after I finished my apprenticeship, which was really good. But geez, I worked hard. All I wanted to do was learn. It wasn't about time in the building. It wasn't about pay. It was just if I could come in on a day off to learn something, I'd do that. And that it was really hard because I had my first kid when I was 20,
Yeah.
Michael, and so I was juggling that. It was a brutal time.
Yeah.
But then when I finished my apprenticeship and I did a year, I wanted to get into restaurants because there's a big difference between hotels and restaurants.
Yeah.
So Billy Moore was opening a restaurant, the Queensland footy player.
Yep.
He was opening a restaurant in Mooloolaba called Earth Bistro.
Yep.
And I went, that was my first sous chef's job. So I went from a chef to party at the Hyatt.
Sous chef there. I didn't realise that.
Yeah, so we helped pour concrete in the cool room there.
Yeah, wow.
And that was really cool because I was working for an idol of mine.
Yeah.
And fuck me, it pumped. That joint was, I think it's called Pavilion now.
Yeah.
Shane Hepburn's got it.
It's a great spot.
Good spot.
Yeah.
So I spent about a year there, and Gareth was saying, mate, you got to travel. And he had all these amazing stories from his time on cruise ships. So I just randomly applied for a cruise ship position that came up in the Courier Mail. You know, when you flick to the back of the paper back then.
That's a newspaper for those that don't know.
And there was a full column that said Disney cruise ships having an open day at the Hilton in Brisbane. So I went down there and applied for a very senior position that I fucking should never have applied for. Got second round of interviews 2 weeks later. I was telling Gareth, my executive chef back then, that I was applying for it. And he was like, go for it. The second round of interviews was at the Marriott, JW Marriott and Goldie.
Yeah.
I went down there, sat in front of the Director of Food and Beverage Global, told him how great I was.
Yeah.
And he said,
He believed you?
We'll be, yeah. Well, I'm on my way home, and by the time I got home, I got a phone call, and it was like, we've accepted your position. But then you go into a holding pattern, and they said the holding pattern can last 6 months. So you get accepted, then you have to do a medical, do a physical, and make sure that you're fully capable, and then the sponsorship program starts. But if you've got a company like Disney that was sponsoring you, it happens quite quickly.
Yeah,
but So I went and got all that day. I went and got police check, I got medical, express posted it, sent it straight back, and I said to Gareth, my boss, I've been accepted. It's probably going to be 6 odd months away, but I'll keep you in the loop. Well, 2 days later, I get a phone call from him saying, here's your ticket, be in Miami in 14 days.
Right.
And that was my journey. So I went over there and, worked in a cruise ship. It was the hardest job I've ever had in my life.
Why?
Just brutally hard, like 18 hours a day. But then,
yeah.
You got paid an obscene amount of money, and it was tax-free US dollars, but you just worked super hard.
Yeah.
And then when you finished, you had so much fun because then you played up because you were cashed up to the eyeballs.
Yeah.
But I mean, that time, that it was amazing, right? It was cool. 9/11 happened. We were sailing the cruise ship into dry dock in Virginia, the world's largest naval base. 9/11 happened, and the world changed. And 9 days later, I was home. So I'll give you the very short version. Went to Brizzy, started a job at Daniel's Steakhouse where I met my wife, Melissa. And
God, that place was an institution as well.
mate, like talk about old school.
Yeah.
Like picture, it was just an ocean of property developers and stockbrokers and
What was the woman's name that?
Jenny.
Yep. She was a force, wasn't she?
Oh, unbelievable. Lined all the waiters up before service, checked their nails, unbuttoned their blouse a little bit further.
I just remember the stories of that place, and it was just,
So Daniels was here, Michaels was at the front,
Yeah.
and Russell Armstrong was the exec chef down there. Melissa my wife was trying to decide whether or not she was going to take a position down at Michaels or up at Daniels.
Yeah.
And, it was probably, it was a good insight for me. I was like, I want a big city job.
Yeah.
Went down there, did it. I enjoyed it, but I realised very quickly that the Sunshine Coast was home.
Okay.
So I said to Mel, I'm moving back to the coast. So if you want to come, let's go.
What a great offer.
Mate, and I tell you,
you
she
wanna
was
come.
like, I'm not.
How about I'd like you to come? No?
And she's like, I'm not following you. And then she did. And we came back here, and the short version of it, we opened Wine Bar probably 12 months later. And with the Reed Property Group was a property development company who my dad knew, Harry Reed, the founder. Ken Reed was the son. And they gave us our first start.
Yeah.
And so the best part of 10 years, we owned that restaurant. It was well before its time in Maroochydore. It was fantastic. Had a ball, had our first child when we were there.
Yep.
And then GFC happened, and I got flogged to death. So we basically sold the restaurant for nothing, lost everything.
Yeah.
Moved to Brizzy with our tail between our legs, and Stokehouse was looking for an exec chef.
Yeah.
Through a friend, Frank Van Handel gave me a call,
Yeah.
and the rest is history. I went down there, spent a couple of years in Brizzy running that restaurant, which that was the cornerstone of my career, I believe. Like it was.
I was going to say, I think when that restaurant first opened in Brisbane, and the site,
Yeah.
because it still is. If anyone says to me, "Where do I have lunch in Brisbane?" It's like that's the place.
Yeah. It's the same in Melbourne, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of just synonymous with one of those long, slow lunches where things just creep up on you, and all of a sudden it's dark, and you're trying to work out what to do next and where to go. And there's an animal on me, wasn't there?
I didn't see it.
Some kind of rodent or something closer to me.
It's probably a funnel web, man, to be wrong.
Only
But
funnel web.
it was funny because after running my own restaurant and being so frugal, to then opening that restaurant, and I remember we moved to Brizzy, borrowed the money for our bond to live in, I can't even remember the suburb we're living in, Greenslopes.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to work. I said to Frank and Peter McMahon, who was the general manager of it, give me a budget to set this kitchen up. And Frank's budget was, there's no budget, just don't give me an excuse that it can't be not done. And I was like, fuck. Like I didn't know. I just never worked like that before.
Yeah.
And he was like, just get the gear, get the equipment, and I don't want to hear an excuse.
So it's basically, there's a lot of trust with someone to give you that and go, just do what you need to do to get the job done.
And mate, and I soon learned very quickly that I needed to hire really, really well.
Yeah.
So we hired Todd Adams, who was a fantastic chef. Braden White was there.
Yeah.
Honvo, who he worked up on the Sunshine Coast with me at Wine Bar. He was fantastic. So I assembled a really great team. And one of the things that I always say is it's not necessarily the fact that we were a two-hat restaurant, but we were a two-hat restaurant that made a shit ton of money. Like we would do 300 covers in a sitting. Like
because I think it's one of those things, and let's park the hat thing for a moment because I want to come back to that. But historically speaking, I think if you ask most people that have 3-hat restaurants, they don't make a lot of money.
No.
I remember
a lot of them go broke.
A mate in Melbourne who had a 1-hat restaurant and he lost that hat. And he said still to this day, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened because he didn't care about that anymore. And now it's just about having a good restaurant, not necessarily about having one that has a hat because it doesn't pay the bills. Yeah. Those things they can translate to sales, don't get me wrong. But he was like, nah, for us, the second they lost the hat, that was the best that could happen.
And mate, we were so brutal on we were brutal on staff because it was it was so hard. Not hard on our staff, but it was fucking hard because we would get flogged to death for lunch and dinner every single day.
And it was 7 days, right?
Yeah. So if you were on the roster for 5 days, you got flogged. Imagine working a job where it was a Saturday night, a full Saturday service every single day.
Yeah.
Like we just kept breaking people.
Yeah.
And then I was one of the first people in Brizzy to go 4 days. We're doing a 4-day roster.
Yeah.
And we were like, what? I'm like, I looked at the roster and I'm like, I think I can make these costs work over 4 days. But then we even broke it down further and we had a lunch team and a dinner team. So if you're on lunch, you came in at 7 and you walked out at 3:30.
Yeah.
And dinner, you came in at 2 and you walked out at 10.
And was there like an A team and a B team? Like was one better than the other?
No, because we'd rotate. So you do a couple of weeks on lunches and then you do a couple of weeks on dinners, which gave everyone a bit of a break. And there were some people that didn't want to work dinners and there's some people that didn't want to work lunches because they wanted a social life. Yeah. So it was the best of both worlds. And suddenly we started retaining more staff. And we're like, this really, really helped. This is well before this big mental health push, which I'm a massive advocate for.
Yeah.
But we did it out of necessity to keep staff because we were burning through them. It was too hard.
Yeah.
So I figured out you could do 300 covers for lunch and not want to kill yourself or quit the next day because you got the night off.
Yeah.
By 6 o'clock, you're having dinner with your family.
Yeah.
Or if you're doing dinner, then you could have a sleep in the next day.
Which is so important.
I agree.
Think. And again, more and more now, I think we realise that. And hospitality is probably one of the worst industries for being slow to acknowledge that.
Yep.
I think that, the nature of the animal is that we just work as hard as we possibly can for as long as we possibly can. I think the older you get, you go, I don't want to do that anymore. And, I think we're both now in, sort of privileged positions where you can go, I don't want to do that.
Yep.
I can say no to things.
Yep.
which is one of those things which is kind of unique, I think, and takes time to get to the point where you can say that.
Yeah.
I think it's only going to be positive for staff and for team members, whatever you want to call people, but it's critical that people realise that their life outside of work is very, very important.
A lot of people don't realise that money, your salary only makes up for such a small part of why people want to work for you.
Yeah.
Now, granted, if you offered $300,000 to be a head chef, you get a bunch of people applying for the job.
Yeah.
But if you want long-term stability,
Yeah.
you need to figure out what makes people happy. And a lot of that is not money. It can be life. It can be they want training. They want education. They might want to open a business and just don't know how to. So if you can tap into that and figure out what people want, and that's what we kind of did at the Stokehouse. And suddenly we had a really good grill chef apply from Urbane.
Yeah.
Then we had a fantastic pastry chef from Echo. And then we had so then it got a bunch easier because I didn't have to do pastry and I didn't have to jump on the grill and then call a pass. And so we had all these people. And then I suddenly thought, this game is about fucking recruitment.
Yeah.
I'm a HR manager.
Yeah.
And then I felt the need to want to say, what do you like to do on your days off?
Yeah.
And then I'd go to the GM and I'm like, Peter loves wine. Can we set up a WASSP course and we'll pay?
Yeah.
And we get to capitalise in on the knowledge.
Yeah.
So I had a great relationship with the Van Handels and I still do.
Yeah.
They're amazing. What they've done for the industry is crazy,
Absolutely,
and their story's epic. Peter McMahon and I still talk on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So that was great. Then I moved back to Sunshine Coast. I opened a restaurant up in Noosa for Peter Kuravita at Noosa Beach House at Sheraton.
Yep.
So that got me back here.
Yeah. Right.
So I soon felt the need to open my own place again and realised that working for somebody just wasn't in my DNA.
Yeah.
I was kind of like my dad.
And we had that conversation last year about, again, I'm certainly now at a point where I feel like I'm going to say no to someone and I might, if I'm working for someone else, that mightn't be great.
Yeah.
But if I'm working for myself...
Because we wanted you desperately to be partners at Market Bistro.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you were just, I get it.
Yeah.
You've been towed up.
Yeah.
You've been scarred.
And that's the thing. I think we all have history. We've
Yep.
got things that will influence our decisions, and, for me, again, it's timing as well. Like things have to be the right time, whatever that is. And sometimes you just feel like things are right and then you do it, whatever it may be. And I think that, and one of the things for me, and one of the things that I respect greatly about you is that you didn't push me for that. It was just like, okay, no problems. You don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. Like it's not your job to then convince me to come in. You know what I mean? It's
like respect in the world for saying no.
Do you want this? And look, it's one of those things where people are like, oh, maybe you could have made some money. It's like, yeah, maybe I could have, but that's not for me.
Could have gone the other way.
I could have gone the other way,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's not about that. It's never. Again, the older I get, I think it's probably going to be my new catch cries. The catch cries, the older I get, but there is that idea of it's not about the money. There's more to it. I think that kind of where you were saying it's whether it's about training, whether it's about learning, whether it's about lifestyle, whether it's about spending time with the people you love, whatever that looks like for everyone's different.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can necessarily package it all up. So, go, well, that's the perfect job for everyone. That's the perfect balance of time and money and everything else. It's just, that's rare. And I think that that's one of the things that makes life difficult these days is that finding that balance, whatever it may be. I mean, we all need to be paid $500,000 a year just so we can afford to go grocery shopping. Looking at you, Coles and Woolies. Anyway, but yeah, I think that idea of, people talk about balance, whatever that looks like is different for every single person. And certainly for me being up on the coast, like I never envisaged living on the Sunshine Coast at all. I ended up here via a very sort of roundabout kind of way. Wouldn't swap it for the world. And I kind of forget that I'm here sometimes as well in terms of where we are. And, I went for a walk on the weekend. We went for a walk and it's like you've got to do it almost every now and then to go to the beach to remind yourself that you're actually living somewhere this awesome.
Yeah.
We've spoken to people before where it's like, why here? It's like, why wouldn't you do it here? What are you
we just
talking
finished
about?
taking 17 staff members, our senior team, to Fraser Island for 2 days.
Yeah.
And seeing the reaction of 15 of them who've never been there before, 10 of them who have come from overseas, just looking around going, this is fucking 2 hours away from where we live.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, it is such an amazing place.
Yeah.
But you can also go down to Mooloolaba Beach at 6 o'clock in the morning and sit on the sand and
There's
just
no
be.
one there.
And arguably, you'll travel to the other side of the world to get a beach that's not as good as
To
that.
do the same thing,
You
like
know,
a shitty beach that's full of pebbles
it is-
and everything else. Yeah.
We live in a very special place. And I think
Absolutely.
sometimes we do have to stop and smell the roses.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why we get so many travellers that want to move here, and that's because it's a great place to live.
Yeah.
And it's getting more and more grown up with better restaurants, better food scene, better wine scene, and there's the old hotel popping up here and there that can offer the level of food, service, and accommodation I think that the Sunshine Coast deserves.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been starved for so long.
Yeah.
But hopefully over the next few years we'll see a big transition with that, and I think that it's going to be even better.
Yep.
I got a hairy one for you.
Oh, yeah.
So if you've got a traveller from overseas,
Yep.
a friend of yours
Yep.
you've known for a long time, and they want to come to the Sunshine Coast and they want to stay in a fantastic hotel,
Yep.
where do you recommend them?
What part of the Sunshine Coast? Anywhere?
Because it's hard, because you got the hinterland, then you got the beach. Like,
Yeah. I think it'd be different for each individual as well.
Yeah.
Like, I obviously I've spent some time up in the hinterland, and so there's a couple of properties up there that I definitely recommend because I worked for that group and they're fantastic. And they're only 30 minutes from the beach, so like it depends on who the person is. Like if I got like one of my mates who
you wouldn't take a family to Clovelly.
no, I wouldn't think so. And like there's still stuff to do up there for families. But if you want to get away for the weekend, then that's definitely the place. Heading up into the hinterland there, because you can be anywhere. It's one of the places in Queensland that gets seasons.
Yep.
I always. God, I remember we used to light the fire sometimes in October.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? It's like 29
'Cause you
degrees at the
can.
coast, but it's like it's 20 degrees up in the hinterland, and it gets cool at night.
Yeah.
The diurnal shift, that daytime nighttime temperature change is quite dramatic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting when you say hotel specifically. Like even if it was honestly, I would get an Airbnb. I would probably get a house.
Would you?
It depends on it depends on what you're looking for. Maybe I'm being a little bit diplomatic here, but a lot of the hotels here are tired, right?
Yeah.
And people haven't spent money on them. I know they've just had some money thrown at them. And there's probably some places in Noosa that have just had some money thrown at them, but they're expensive places to stay. But I think you can still get some value for some, for Airbnbs or depending on what you want.
Yep.
I think like for me, if I was coming to the Sunshine Coast, I'd want to probably be near the beach,
Yep.
depending if that's the holiday I was looking for. What beach? God, I mean, again, I still love Coolum Beach.
Yeah,
I really
of
like
course.
that beach. Living in Brisbane for a few years, and it's just like that was the sort of the home beach, I suppose. And
We had a staycation at Christmas time, stayed
Yeah.
at Softel up in there, so it was
Yeah.
unbelievable.
I think that's the thing. Like they're the ones that are in my mind. They've just spent some money on those rooms. Like last year, I think it was.
The
and
rooms were great.
Yeah.
And the beach, it's everything you want for a family holiday.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's expensive.
The only thing with Noosa, I think beach is that beach is so bloody pretty.
Yeah.
But it just gets so busy as well. I mean,
There's an
most locals won't go
ocean of-
near that beach for so long.
There's an ocean of umbrellas.
Over
there.
Christmas, yeah, those bloody
Cool
cool cabanas. Thanks very much. I mean, even we're going for a walk on the weekend in Mooloolaba. I would have seen 500 of those bloody cool cabanas everywhere. It's like that's the stuff where we don't do that.
No.
Like you don't just go to the beach and hang out for the day
Yeah.
because it's right there. So you just don't go most of the time, which is ridiculous. But-
Frequently, we bring the kids down to Mooloolaba
Yeah.
here, and it's just so pretty.
I mean, we drove down there. It's like, shit, there's 10 restaurants down here.
Yeah.
You got Pier 33, you got Fish on Parkin, there's a little Japanese place, there's a Thai place. It's like, where did these all come from? I didn't even know they were there.
Yeah.
Because if no one goes down that way, they're never gonna find them.
Do you know that as a kid, where Pier 33 was the yacht club, the original
Right.
Mooloolaba yacht
Fancy,
club? Fuck, mate.
really.
You needed slacks to get in there. And I remember my father would go down there for a business meeting. And if we happened to get the call up to come and pick him up, it was like we got the riot act read to us before we went in there.
Really?
Oh, God. And it was wall to wall packed with yachties and local business people.
Right.
And, that was, it was crazy because I remember as a kid distinctly the Park and Parade here was a dirt road.
Yeah.
And then suddenly more and more businesses went down there. The yacht club was extremely fancy. Mooloolaba Surf Club was pumping. The wharf here, where Rice Boy is, was such an amazing tourist destination. Underwater World was pumping.
Yeah.
Big Pineapple was pumping.
Yeah.
This end of the coast was where it was all at.
Yeah.
It was probably less about Noosa. But now it's like, if you're coming to the Sunshine Coast, you go to Noosa. And I think there's suddenly starting to get a bit of a shift now, because we've got some good restaurants down here.
Yeah. And
The hinterland's the same, mate. There's some crackers up there.
Absolutely. And and I think it also, when you think about like what's grown up in the hinterland as well, there's plenty of produce up there as well. We've got all the seafood down here. There's lots of things that are relatively close that are really good.
Well, the Sunshine Coast is such a food bowl.
Yeah.
A lot of our greens come from Gatton,
Yep.
which is literally an hour and a half away. We grow raspberries, blueberries, all of the greens.
Yeah.
The seafood.
All of
is
the
one that's-
avocados up there.
It's crazy, mate.
Yeah. Lychees.
Where do you stop?
Yeah.
Padron peppers.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. We're so fortunate on the Sunshine Coast. If you love food, it's and you talk about food miles.
Yeah.
You run a ring around the Sunshine Coast. There's not much you can't get here.
I was in a shop the other day, retail shop, buying shirts and just T-shirts. And I was talking to the lady that was serving me, and she was amazing. And we just talked, how did it get started? It's something about the markets. And so I went down to the Kawana markets on a Saturday morning, and it was like, this place is great. And then she got into this full conversation. So not in the industry, but it started to tell me which was the best butcher on the coast for different things. And you go to this one for your pork, and you go to this one for your meat. I'm like, I don't even know this. What are you talking about? And I love that someone's just so passionate about what they eat and where they get it from, and the producers and everything else. And they're not industry.
No.
They're just someone who's into it.
That's right.
I hate the word, and I'm going to say it, but foodie. I hate that word so much. I just find it...
Worse than pivot?
Oh, no, pivot's just overused. I don't know. I feel like foodie it just makes you sound like a dick. Because people are like, I'm a bit of a foodie. And it's like, oh, Christ.
Instantly,
it's just like, I'm out.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll admit this.
You're a foodie?
No, I'm not a foodie. No, I would never admit that. I will admit this. On a certain application that I no longer have to use, it was on my phone, about meeting people from time to time. One of the things in my bio on that said, do not use the term foodie. I think that got rid of most people. I mean, anyway, I can't stand that word. I don't know why. It just grates me. And I think it's because maybe it's, some PTSD from people when you're working in restaurants and people are like, I'm a foodie, so I know what this should taste like, or I know what you've done wrong here. It's like, you read the Coles magazine once and say now you're a foodie. It's just like, I don't know. I know that's bad. I shouldn't say they're customers and they're paying the bills and everything else. But
mate, and I guess when you're in the wine game and you're a som in a restaurant, you're dealing with like legitimately the pointy end of fuckheads. Like they are. If there is legitimately this, I don't know what it is with wine. It may be only a small amount of them, but why does the pretentiousness just flow out of people when they talk about wine? Because it doesn't need to be like that.
No, it definitely doesn't.
It's the same with coffee.
Yeah,
and it's
beer, craft beer.
Oh my God, I don't understand why, but
I think it is that thing of it's that little bit of knowledge is scary, and I think it becomes just like, I'm the whatever you want to call yourself in the group, or I'm known as the wine person. So therefore they sort of take that mantle, and then it becomes a pissing contest of watch me do this, and I don't maybe look like I have any idea about anything in the world, but when it comes to wine, I look more like I know more about beer.
Or a lumberjack.
Oh, you're
sorry
about that. Lumberjack. What is? I don't know where that one came from. Can swing an axe. I think it is the beard. You're right.
But I was in a restaurant, City Soccer.
No.
Just this story came to my head with a couple of good friends of mine, and we're at a restaurant, and we're all wine lovers, and it's a very, very well-known restaurant in Sydney, and we're talking about old world and new world wine, and
we've had that anymore.
We've had this conversation before. Anyway, one of the guys was like, I just don't understand. I don't understand why you need to spend so much money on old world wine. I don't get it. So the som come over to the table, and I'm like, please do not ask him about old world wine. And he goes, I'd like to order a bottle of Burgundy, please. white Burgundy, but all my friends keep telling me that you can't buy a decent bottle of Burgundy for under X amount of price. So can you please choose something on the wine list, an old world wine for under this amount of money that we're going to enjoy? And the sommelier closed the wine list up and said, you should listen to your friends. And I thought, holy fuck.
Yeah. And look, and
He wanted to set the restaurant on fire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the challenge. I mean, at the end of the day, the customer's the customer.
Yep.
One of the things, probably one of the most important lessons I ever learnt in the wine industry and as a som is it's not about me, it's not about me, it's not about me.
Yep.
It
Enjoy
can't be.
your Shiraz with your
Just
oysters.
have whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. I can put this through the soda stream for you if you want. That's fine. No problem. Don't do that also. That doesn't work. There's multiple accounts that show you what you should and shouldn't put in a soda stream. But yeah, Riesling is not one. Allegedly.
I'd love to ask you how you know that.
Oh no, I know. It's still sitting on the ceiling in an apartment in Collingwood, Victoria, I think. But it isn't about me, and I think this is one of the challenges and where SOMs get a bad rap is people that feel like they need to educate someone and they need to tell them what to drink.
Yep.
And it's like that's not what it's about. It's actually about listening.
Same with food.
It's the same with food, 100%.
I tell all my chefs, cook for the people, not for yourself.
It's not about me.
You can't not do something because it's traditional. Like, if you've got half the restaurant saying that your curry's too spicy, then don't make it as fucking
And it's
hot.
probably spicy, yeah.
It could be as traditional as hell, but if you want an empty restaurant, keep doing it that way.
Yeah.
Or dull it down and be full.
Feed the
what
masses.
do you want to do?
Yeah.
I just don't get it, and I think that's I always say that's one of the things that Mitch and Eliza at Rice Boys done really, really well. They've just listened to the people.
Yeah.
Yes, we've taken elements of tradition with the Asian food that we do, but we've listened to the people, and it's not traditional.
Yeah.
And we've listened to what people want, and we put it on the plate.
Yeah.
And that's been the success of it. If you hang on to what is supposed to be, you must drink champagne or Riesling with oysters, and you must drink this with that, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
I'm with you. If somebody wants to drink Pinot with a piece of coral trout, then fucking do it.
Do whatever you want.
Yeah, it tastes good, right? The wine's great. The food's fantastic. Like, what's the problem with that?
And I think that's the thing is that once you realise that, that's when then that's just freedom because you don't have to worry about it because if you're sitting in a restaurant and you've written a wine list that's got the most obscure shit you can possibly imagine on there because you think it's really good, yeah, cool. If it's your restaurant, go to town.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because you live and die by the sword. If you can't sell it, that's on you.
Yeah.
And then you just drink it yourself or whatever. But the commercial viability of a wine list should be the number one thing.
Yeah.
It needs to make sense for the venue. It needs to make money for the venue.
Which relates to your demographic of people that's walking through the door.
Absolutely right.
Why would you have 15 different vintages of Grange in a cafe?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like, you're just going to go broke.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing and you'll see it. There's a couple of restaurants in the world where that's kind of like, because it's the owner, like, Paul Greco at Eville and in New York, when that first opened, I think it had 13 pages of Riesling. And that was it.
Yeah, good.
It's just like, that's all it was. It's just like, that's fantastic. Is everyone going to love it? Absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're also in a place like Manhattan where you can do that because then it's like, oh, this is cool. This only has that and it becomes a thing.
Because there's 7 million people that live there, so you're a better chance, right?
A little bit different if you're on the Sunshine Coast and, you open a wine bar and you only sell natty wines. It's like, well, that's... How long was that going to last? And I think there's some people that will... So I'm not having you go at natty stuff, just to be clear. That'll be another episode. But I think that understanding of... it's not about the customer being right, but the customers generally know what they want.
Yep.
And a lot of them know that before they even leave the house.
Yep.
They know that I'm going to go out and I'm going to drink Pinot Gris today. I don't care where it's from. I don't care who makes it. I know I've got a budget in mind and I like Pinot Gris. So that's what I want to drink.
Yep.
Don't try and convince me to drink fucking Muscadet. I don't care. I don't even know what that is. I don't know how to say it. I don't know what the grape variety is. I don't know where it's from.
What it is. I was about to say, can you say that again? Because I've never heard of it.
Well, it doesn't like it's and like you can have some fun wines.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know. For me, and it's not about necessarily training. I mean, like I've done Western. I'm CMS qualified. I've done all those things. But the more I sort of got into that world of wine education, there's some pretty hard and fast rules that used to be around. They are changing a little bit, which is really positive. But you've got a couple of big organisations that are fairly rigid, and there's positives and negatives in that. But also, as the more I get into it, I'm like, I I don't think this is relevant for me.
Because it must be hard to write that initial wine list for a restaurant because you don't know who's going to be eating in there.
And that's
So what you start with and what you finish with often must be vastly different, right?
and 100%. I mean, when I consulting in restaurants and I'd be writing wine lists for people where the restaurant isn't even open. And they're like, can you write a wine list for us? Like, well, yes, but I need all of this information first. It's like, well, give me all of these things and then we'll sort of start with this. And the idea being you start small and get bigger.
Yeah.
It's really easy to write a big wine list.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, there was a wine list in Brisbane that just got written and it was a new restaurant. It was in a hotel. They had all the money and the wine that came out, it was ridiculous. It was like stupidly good. It was big, multiple vintages of so many things, everything else. And and it started winning some awards and it's like, this is bullshit. Because it's like it's really, really easy when you have an open budget to write a really great wine list. Try doing it with no money and 30 bottles.
Yeah.
It's like that's where the artistry comes into it. And places like Chiswick in Wallara, that was for me. They wrote a wine list there with I think it was 50 wines originally. It might have been or 100 wine. Either way, it was tiny.
Yeah.
And you sort of sit there and you're like, how can you do that? But then you go there and it's like, this place is awesome.
Yeah.
Like the list is interesting. There's enough in there where it's like, no, I can have something fun and different if I want to.
Yeah.
If I just want to drink
Something
Chablis,
safe.
I can bloody have Chablis. Chablis. Can't speak. And that's the thing that always frustrates me. And not so much these days, I don't go out anywhere. But when I used to go out, it's like I just want a good glass of Riesling. I just want a good glass of Chablis. And you go somewhere, and they're like, oh, we've got this whatever made by nuns in a bathtub in Europe, and it's like I don't want that. I just want something clean and fresh and delicious.
Yeah.
I want the Peroni of wine.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna write a thesis about this.
I keep saying
I just want to drink it and be crisp and delicious.
I keep saying that literally what you've just explained to me then is value for money because it's like you've got an idea of what you want. And I think the quintessential definition of a great somm is a sommelier that can come to the table and go, what do you feel like drinking? Can I give you some assistance with the wine list? And you can say, this is what I'm eating. This is my budget.
Yeah.
What do you recommend?
Yeah.
And if the sommelier can go, hey, have you tried blah, 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 blah.
The first question that person should ask is, what do you normally enjoy?
Yeah. What's your favourite?
Because everyone will have an answer to that.
Yeah.
Everyone has an answer to that, even if they know nothing
massively
about wine.
oaked Russian River Chardonnay,
Right.
then you're going to...
Here it is.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like, I know I use this term, it's like people think they need to be salmon. It's like you don't have to swim upstream.
Yeah.
Just take the money.
What's your opinion on chefs out there? And there's a bunch of them out there that they throw shade at a medium well or a well done steak. Because my opinion is you're paying for it.
You're eating it.
If you want to kill the steak, kill the steak.
Go for it.
I'm not eating it.
We used to have a guy that came to a restaurant too. His description of how he wanted his steak cooked was hockey puck.
Yeah.
So it was like, what's the cooking
Cook my
temperature?
$80
Hockey puck.
Yeah.
I want it to bounce when it hits the plate.
I've told this story a million times. Often Monday through Wednesday in my very first restaurant, it would only ever be my wife on the front and me in the kitchen. And it was about 3:30. We usually shut the kitchen, but we were there anyway. A couple of business guys walked in, R.M. Williams, check shirts, and they said, is the kitchen open? And Melissa said, yeah, absolutely, we'll cook whatever you like. And he goes, all we want is we want 3 steaks, medium well, and I want a fried egg with it and chips. And Melissa came into the kitchen and said, these guys want steak and chips with an egg. I went out to the table and I said, no problem, would you like your egg fried or poached? And they said, oh, you're happy to do the fried egg? And I said, I'm happy to cook you whatever. I just can't guarantee you how much the egg's going to cost, but I can guarantee it's going to be good.
Yeah.
So those guys proceeded to order 3 bottles of Chateau Margaux.
Yeah.
One of the guys said that he had a cellar full of it at home. I couldn't believe it, mate. These guys were literally country guys, cattle farmers.
Yeah.
They were so educated on wine. It was crazy.
Yeah.
We charged only what we had to for the steak and eggs. And I reckon we've seen them 100 times over the next 2 years.
So it's an investment.
But we could have said no. I could have said, well, I'm not fucking cooking you an egg.
It's
Shove it up
$3.30.
your ass.
Yeah.
I can have the steak off the menu.
But that happens a lot.
Frequently. I hear about it. I watch a bunch of social media forums around chefs. Sometimes just grates my gears because people just forget about the fact that they're cooking for somebody else, not for themselves, not for their ego.
The person's going to pay their wages or pay their rent.
It's so unbelievably frustrating for me sometimes to read that because I think, especially some of these chefs who are employed to work for somebody else and make decisions on behalf of somebody who's invested their life savings into a restaurant, and the word no Like, I don't understand why. It shouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
Our job is to cook and feed people and charge them for that privilege.
Yeah.
If you can listen to somebody and give them what they want, you're halfway there. If you are so dead set in your ways, and I mean, we've had this conversation where nobody will ever pour Sauvignon Blanc in this restaurant. It's like, what the fuck are you? Just go broke now.
It's just exactly, and that's that story. I'll retell that story just because I think it was such a unique thing for me. I was years ago. I was traveling on a wine trip, and this person who was on the trip, she was so proud of the fact that she didn't pour New World Sauvignon Blanc in the restaurant. So this was
New World, basically Australia,
New Zealand, Chile, like kind of South Africa. But it was basically she was against Sauvignon Blanc. I was flabbergasted. But A, it wasn't her restaurant. It was on the water in Sydney. This is a big restaurant doing big numbers. And I said to her, how many times a day do you get asked for Sauvignon Blanc? She's like, maybe 20 or 30. And I said, so you have the time to explain to those people that you don't have any New World Sauvignon Blanc, but you've got this really lovely Sancerre that it's from the Loire Valley, and it is Sauvignon Blanc, but it's made slightly differently, and it has some lees stirring, and it's aged in barrel, so it has a little bit more texture and richness. And just give them the Cloudy Bay. Like, why?
And sell 10,000 bottles of it.
Just
you know what I mean?
Put the tax on it where you don't want to, but if someone really wants it, they'll buy it.
Yeah.
But I don't understand this thing of like, no, it's my job to educate people that this isn't right. What do you mean right?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? And like, she said to me, I'll never forget this. She said, I don't believe in it.
Yeah.
I said, it's not a unicorn. It's a wine.
Yeah.
Believe it. It exists. It's right here.
And
it's the number one selling grape variety in Australia.
And if 30 people ask you for it every day.
That stuff drives me
What's your
nuts.
opinion on wine and food? Like, do you like pairing? Like, I find it fascinating when I'll often go up the beach and we'll stay in an apartment up near Rainbow Beach, and a few friends of mine are mad foodies. And we often talk about the fact that, they'll say, what are we going to cook?
Yeah.
And they'll bring a bottle.
Yep.
Because I'll say, I'll bring
cook X, Y, Z.
Yeah. And I find it really fascinating. And I don't think there's a right and wrong way to do it. But I do find it fascinating from one person to another what that means. So if I say to you that I'm serving oysters with mignonette dressing, it'll mean something different to you than somebody else.
Absolutely.
And that's what I find fascinating about the wine food pairing. Like, I say to you, you coming over to my place tonight and I'm cooking lamb cutlets and I'm marinating them in balsamic and rosemary and garlic. I'm going to throw them on the barbecue.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to throw them back in that dressing and I'm going to serve a little rocket salad with it. What are we drinking?
Does the balsamic have to be there?
You're the fucking wine guy, not the chefs.
But that's the thing.
You don't have to eat it.
But that's the whole point. Like, for me, it's like, well, hang on, let's work backwards. It's like, okay.
No, let's leave the balsamic out.
But
the only reason I put it in there is because I knew the acid would drive you.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. It's one of those things that it's like the two things that matter for me, this is not an education session. It's just from my point of view, is texture and acidity when it comes to food and wine matching. And you can contrast, you can compare, you can do whatever you want sometimes. But honestly, the greatest food and wine matches I've ever had have probably been slightly left of centre.
Yep.
Maybe when you're trying to take the piss a little bit, or something, you might have read something about something working and you're like, there's no way that's going to, it's like, holy shit. Like, Gewürztraminer and roasted duck. That's one of those things. It's like, why? And then you have it, you're like, oh, okay, yep, get it.
Sauterne and foie gras.
Foie gras and Sauterne's another great one, and
I remember when I first tried that.
Yeah.
I thought, why am I drinking sweet wine
at the start
of a course? Like, I thought, this guy's fucking clueless.
Yeah, and then you have it and you just like, you start drooling, yeah.
And I get asked this question all the time, death row meal, and instantly I go, fresh foie gras, caramelized apples, shadow you can.
Yeah.
Like,
it's not bad.
For me, it's just lightly toasted brioche.
Little brioche,
oh my God, fucking hell. Like, seriously.
But those moments, they are few and far between. I think we kind of act like they're really common, but they're really not.
No.
Because the alchemy required for everything to work is not just about the food and the wine.
And the way food sometimes affects wine. Like, I remember somebody giving me a glass of wine. I can't remember what. You'll know exactly that's the top one. I'm sure you will. And it was a glass of white wine, and I tried it, and I went, "It's fucking shit." And they were like, "What?" I said, "It tastes like blah blah blah." And they said, "You just have asparagus." I said, "I literally had asparagus 10 minutes ago."
Yeah.
And I thought, that is fascinating for me. And then half an hour later, after I had some more food, I tried the wine, and it
Different
was
thing.
absolutely completely different.
Yeah.
And there was that moment.
We're going to stop.
Was that same guy told us to turn our phones on silent? A couple of people, like I look at that and I think that for me is the fascination with wine and food pairing. And I know that there's no hard and fast rules, but I do find it fascinating because, you know, if you put current vintage Cabernet with those lamb cutlets with the balsamic, it's probably going to taste like shit.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm like, that for me is fun.
Yeah.
Especially when you're having a dinner party. Because if me and you had a dinner party and I tell you what I'm going to cook, you'd probably bring something that I've probably never even tried before that you've probably tried with that and it's really worked.
And I think that's the thing is that, you know, that idea of that, everyone's going to be different.
Yeah.
Like you put 10 Soms in a room and give them the same food, you'll have 10 different responses to the answer. And it's about specifics. Like, you know, I used to, still to this day, like you walk into a big box retailer, you know, which we all know exist. You walk into them, and there used to be one in particular where they'd have next to the Shiraz, there'd just be a picture of a cow. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
So everything from that animal goes with Shiraz. And it's like, that is probably one of the most bullshit sentences that I've ever heard in my entire life. It's like, why would you classify an entire animal? And this is that thing where it's like, okay, chicken and Chardonnay goes really well. Okay, no problems. Does chicken tikka masala go really well with Chardonnay? What about Thai green chicken curry? Like, what are we talking about? Why do we talk about the protein?
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, I'm having chicken. You're not just having chicken.
Because I often will talk about the sauce.
It's always about the sauce.
It's
always about everything else. The protein is such a small part of it, generally speaking.
Because the sauce can carry so much power, acid.
Absolutely, all of those things that are going to throw it. I remember, and probably one of the most why this got drummed into me. I remember once doing a dinner, regional New South Wales, and the menu had been done for months and months and months, and duck was the main course. So I'd chosen 2 different Pinots. They were going to work perfectly, really classic duck. I'll get there, and the chef's like, "Oh, I've changed the duck a little bit." I'm like, "Okay, no worries. What have you done?" "I've smoked it with green tea."
Oh wow!
All right. Why didn't you just shoot it in the face? It was, and so I'm now at this dinner. I can't back out. These wines are there. We're in the middle of nowhere. I can't get any more wine. I can't do anything else. And I've got to get up on this stage, talk to 100 people that these wines will be perfect with this green tea smoked duck, which, if you think about there's just nothing.
I'm fucking sweating for you because I don't know what you do.
I had no idea. I was like, look, we made a bit of a last minute change, so let's hope this all works well. It didn't, for the record. It was horrendous. But it was that 1 degree, that little one thing that changed that actually, well, it wasn't a small thing, it was a big thing, but it's like, it just changed the entire meal. And that's the thing, is that this guy didn't realise it didn't just affect that dish, it therefore affected the night.
Yeah.
Because people's opinion of that event is going to be categorised by, someone smoked green tea smoked duck to this beautiful local duck that then you couldn't taste because it now just tastes like smoke and tea.
So you're avoiding the question, what are we having with my lamb?
Oh, it'd be Cabernet. Well, probably. You know what? It could even be.
My budget's under $30.
Yeah, no worries. That's fine.
Yeah, give me a.
Oh, you want a specific wine?
One come to mind.
Probably for me. Okay, so with lamb, normally I'd go for Cabernet because it's got tannin. It's got if you say chops, you say lamb chops. So you're going to have some fat, right? So you need something to cut through that. That's going to be acid. That acid can come from either just pure acid from the grape variety or tannin as well. I like using tannin when it comes to lamb in particular. So Cabernet would be there. Yeah. You don't want something young and aggressive. You want something with a little bit of age that have come into itself. Maybe something with a little bit of Merlot just to fill that donut hole in the middle of the palate you can get. And I'd probably be going either there's 2 different reasons I'd go to.
Cab Merlot. I just don't. I'm not a fan of Cabernet.
The thing is, as soon as you say Merlot into it, people are like, oh, no, Merlot.
Because sometimes it's really hard to get wines that have got some age on it, right?
Totally, absolutely.
But throw a little bit of Merlot in, and I think it softens it up a bit, right?
The other thing is you could use, which is something that just came to mind, like something like a cool climate Shiraz from a decent vintage that's got a bit of age on there. So even something like Clare, you could have Clare Valley Shiraz, and there's like a couple of producers that always have something older, like Mitchell, for example, in the Clare. They've always got old releases. They've got their McNichols that are generally 5 to 6 years old, maybe a little bit more. Something like that would be fun. Yeah. or you go to WA and you drink a little. Well, there's hundreds of different things, little Cullen Cab Merlot or something like that, where it's just consistently good.
$30, mate.
Yeah, not Diana Madeline. But the thing is,
Can you remember when we first opened Market Bistro? There was a guy who brought. There's 3 girls that were drinking cocktails all night, and
oh, that's right.
an older guy thought he'd buy him a bottle of wine and brought him a magnum of current vintage
Diana Madeline.
Yeah,
it was a mouthful. They couldn't even swallow
it.
it.
Like drinking the Sahara Desert.
It was so dry. But they couldn't drink it. It was the word. Yeah,
it's an expensive bottle of wine.
He needs to work on his game because that was a wrong choice.
Go Cristal next time.
Absolutely. If in doubt, champagne. That's for everyone. Mate, I reckon we've talked a bit about ourselves today. I think that over time, will obviously more and more will come out.
Dig a bit deeper.
Absolutely, but I think the key thing is, we're here just to talk a little bit of shit about
shop
hospo.
Yep.
About hotels, about travel, dining, all those kind of things. We're going to have some friends come and visit us.
Got a good one next week.
We've got some great people coming, which is awesome. And we just want to sort of hear some stories. So,
Yep.
I think hopefully we've given a little bit of a story about the fact that we can talk shit without taking a breath for an hour.
And I think one of the things we should say is that if anybody's got any questions that they want us to touch base on, maybe shoot us an email.
Absolutely.
Send a message to us because we'll try and cover some stuff. If people want to hear about it,
absolutely.
I mean, I found when I first opened my first restaurant, and I didn't have a sommelier straight away. I needed help, and I think to have a guide that I want to have it a bit of an open book. If somebody wants a question, we'll try and answer it. We'll maybe even work our way towards a bit of a Q&A, answer 10 questions at the end of the podcast. That'd be cool. I think it'd be a bit of fun. So if anybody's got any questions, but feel free. It'd be a food or wine. Just shoot us a message.
Go to behindpodcast.com.au. Get in touch.